Two cops pinned a pregnant woman against an iron gate while a rich man in a designer suit kicked her puppy across the pavement. She screamed, clutching her belly, begging them to stop. They laughed. The man grabbed the puppy by the neck and raised it high. "Trash belongs in the trash," he said. But none of them saw the figure running down the street, a man in navy camouflage, a German shepherd at his side, his eyes locked on his wife. He was a Navy SEAL, and he had just watched everything. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And if this story touches your heart, subscribe and stay until the end. You won't believe what happens next. Ryan Carter's hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. He stood at the corner of Maple and Richmond, 200 feet from the iron gate of the Harrington estate, watching his pregnant wife being held by two uniformed officers while a man in a gray suit stood over her, his foot pressing down on their puppy's chest. Sarah was crying. He could hear her from here.
"Please," she begged. "Please, he's just a baby. He didn't do anything."
The man in the suit, tall, blonde, early 40s, with a kind of face that had never been told no, looked down at her with disgust. "Your mutt wandered onto my property. That's trespassing. And so are you."
"We were walking on the sidewalk. We weren't—"
"Shut up." He kicked the puppy again. The tiny German shepherd yelped, scrambling to get away, but the man's Italian loafer caught it in the ribs. Ryan started running. Max, his 5-year-old German shepherd, ran beside him, muscles coiled, ears flat, sensing what his handler was feeling without needing to be told. The two officers holding Sarah didn't see him coming. They were too busy laughing at something the rich man said. "You people," the man continued, his voice dripping with contempt. "You come into neighborhoods like this with your rescue dogs and your—" he glanced at Sarah's belly, "your situations, and you think you belong here?" Sarah's voice cracked. "My husband is a Navy SEAL. He serves this country. We have every right to—" "A Navy SEAL?" the man laughed. "Then where is he? If he's so tough, why isn't he here protecting you?" Ryan was 50 feet away now. 40. 30. The man reached down and grabbed the puppy by the scruff of its neck, lifting it off the ground. The puppy whimpered, legs kicking helplessly in the air. "You know what I do with strays that wander onto my property?" Sarah screamed. "No, please!" 20 feet. The man cocked his arm back, ready to throw the puppy against the iron gate. 10 feet. Ryan hit him like a freight train. The impact sent both men sprawling across the pavement. The puppy flew from the rich man's grip, landing on the grass with a startled yelp. Max was there in an instant, positioning himself over the tiny dog, shielding it with his body. Ryan was on his feet before the rich man knew what had happened. He grabbed him by the collar of his expensive suit and hauled him upright. "Touch my wife again," Ryan said, his voice low and deadly calm. "Touch my dog again. See what happens." The man's face went from shock to fury in 2 seconds flat. "Do you know who I am?" he sputtered. "I'm Victor Harrington. My family built this town. I'll have you arrested for assault." "You were assaulting my pregnant wife. She was trespassing. On a public sidewalk." Victor's eyes darted to the two officers, who had released Sarah and were now reaching for their weapons. "Officers, arrest this man!" The older cop, a heavy-set man with a graying mustache, stepped forward. His hand rested on his holstered gun. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step away from Mr. Harrington." Ryan didn't move. Sarah rushed to his side, one hand on her belly, the other clutching Ryan's arm. "Ryan, please, let's just go, please." "Your wife was trespassing," the younger cop said. He was maybe 30, with the kind of smirk that said he enjoyed this part of the job. "And that dog of yours was off-leash in a residential area. That's 2 violations right there." "The puppy was on a leash," Sarah said. "It slipped. For 2 seconds.
I was picking it up when—"
"When you entered Mr. Harrington's property," Victor interrupted. He was straightening his suit, regaining his composure, his confidence returning now that his police friends were backing him up. "I have security cameras. I have witnesses. Your little mutt crossed my property line, which makes it my property now." Ryan's jaw tightened. "The puppy is 3 months old." "Old enough to learn its place," Victor smiled. "Just like its owners." The older cop stepped closer. His nameplate read Mills. His eyes were cold, calculating. The eyes of a man who had learned which side of every conflict paid better. "Here's what's going to happen," Mills said. "You're going to apologize to Mr. Harrington for putting your hands on him. Your wife is going to apologize for letting her animal run loose. And then you're both going to leave this neighborhood and never come back." Ryan looked at him. "And if I don't?" Mills smiled. "Then I arrest you for assault. I arrest your wife for trespassing and resisting, and I call animal control to pick up both your dogs. The pregnant lady goes to county lockup. The dogs go to the pound." He leaned in. "You know what happens to dogs at the pound when no one claims them, right?" Sarah made a sound, half sob, half gasp. Ryan felt something cold settle in his chest. He knew this game. He had seen it played in a dozen countries, by 100 petty tyrants who thought their badges or their money made them untouchable. He also knew he couldn't win it. Not here. Not now. Not with Sarah 8 months pregnant and 2 cops with their hands on their weapons.
"Ryan," Sarah whispered, "please, for the baby."
He closed his eyes. When he opened them, the rage was still there. But it was buried now, locked away in the same place he kept everything else that couldn't help him survive. "Fine," he said. Victor's smile widened. "I'm sorry, I didn't hear that." "I said fine." "Fine what?" Sarah gripped his arm tighter.
"Ryan, don't."
But Ryan knew what Victor wanted, and he knew that giving it to him now meant taking it back later, with interest. "I apologize," Ryan said, the words tasting like ash, "for putting my hands on you." Victor nodded slowly, savoring the moment. "And?" "And my wife apologizes for her dog."
"She can speak for herself."
Sarah's voice shook.
"I'm sorry."
Louder. "I'm sorry." Victor looked at her belly, then back at Ryan. "You know, I almost feel bad for that kid, growing up with parents who can't control themselves or their animals." He shook his head. "Sad, really." Ryan said nothing. Victor turned to the officers. "Let them go. I think they've learned their lesson." Mills nodded. "You heard him. Get out of here. And if I see either of you in this neighborhood again, I won't be so generous." Ryan took Sarah's hand. Max fell in beside them, the puppy tucked safely between his front legs, still trembling. They walked. Behind them, Victor Harrington laughed and said something to the cops that Ryan couldn't hear. But he heard them laugh too. He would remember that sound. They were halfway down the block when Sarah started crying. Not the quiet tears she had been holding back. Real sobs, the kind that came from somewhere deep and broken. Ryan stopped. He pulled her close, careful of her belly, and held her while she shook.
"I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I should have been more careful. I should have—"
"This isn't your fault."
"But—"
"Sarah, look at me." She looked up. Her brown eyes were red, swollen, filled with a fear he had never seen in her before. "This is not your fault," he said again. "That man is a monster. Those cops are corrupt. None of what just happened was because of anything you did."
"But what if they come after us? What if they—"
"They won't."
"How do you know?"
Ryan didn't answer. Because the truth was, he didn't know. What he knew was that men like Victor Harrington didn't stop. They pushed until someone pushed back harder. And Ryan was very, very good at pushing back. They made it home as the sun was setting. The rental house wasn't much. Peeling paint, creaky floors, a front porch that sagged in the middle. But it was theirs, at least for now. Ryan helped Sarah inside and settled her on the couch. He checked the puppy for injuries, bruised ribs maybe, but nothing broken. The little dog licked his hand and wagged its tail, already forgetting the trauma. Max positioned himself at Sarah's feet, his amber eyes alert, watching the door. "I'm going to make you some tea," Ryan said. Sarah caught his hand. "Ryan, I know that look." "What look?" "The one you get when you're planning something." He forced a smile. "I'm planning to make tea." "Ryan." He knelt beside her, taking both her hands in his. "I'm not going to do anything stupid. I promise. Right now, all I care about is you and the baby." "And after the baby?" He didn't answer. "Ryan, please. I can't lose you. Not now. Not when we're so close." He leaned forward and kissed her forehead. "You're not going to lose me. I'm just going to make sure no one ever puts their hands on you again." "How?" "I don't know yet," he stood. "But I'll figure it out." He didn't sleep that night. While Sarah rested, Ryan sat on the back porch with Max beside him, staring at nothing, thinking about everything. Victor Harrington. The name itched at the back of his mind like a splinter he couldn't reach. He pulled out his phone and started searching. What he found made his stomach turn. Victor Harrington wasn't just rich. He was connected. His family had owned half the businesses in this county for 3 generations. His father had been a state senator. His brother was a district court judge. His name appeared on the donor lists of every major political campaign in the region. But that wasn't what caught Ryan's attention. It was the other articles, the ones buried beneath pages of press releases and charity announcements. A maid who had worked at the Harrington estate and disappeared 5 years ago. Police ruled it a voluntary departure. A landscaper who filed a complaint against Victor for assault, then withdrew it a week later and moved out of state. 3 separate domestic violence calls to the estate, all mysteriously unfounded. A pattern, hidden in plain sight. Ryan's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He opened it. "You should have kept walking, soldier. Now you've made an enemy you can't beat. Enjoy your last few weeks of peace." Ryan stared at the screen. Then he did something that surprised even himself. He smiled. The next morning, Ryan made a call. "Ghost, it's Carter." The voice on the other end was deep, graveled by years of cigarettes and secrets. "Carter, heard you got out." "Medical discharge, busted leg." "Shame. You were one of the good ones." A pause. "So why are you calling me at 6 in the morning?" "I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that involves digging up dirt on a rich man who thinks he's untouchable." Silence. Then, "What did he do?" Ryan told him. All of it. The pregnant wife, the puppy, the corrupt cops, the threat. When he finished, Ghost let out a low whistle. "Victor Harrington. That's a big fish, brother. His family owns half the politicians in that county." "I know." "You know they'll come after you." "I know." "You know this could get ugly." "I'm counting on it." Another pause. "All right. Give me 72 hours. I'll see what I can find." "Thanks, Ghost." "Don't thank me yet. And Carter?" "Yeah?" "Watch your back. Men like Harrington don't fight fair. They fight dirty, and they fight to win." Ryan looked out the window at Sarah, still sleeping peacefully on the couch. Max curled protectively at her side. "So do I," he said. "So do I." 2 days later, Sarah went into early labor. It started with a pain she thought was indigestion. Then another. Then a wetness that soaked through her dress and made her cry out in shock. Ryan was at the dock, loading crates, when his phone rang.
"Ryan!"
Sarah's voice was thin, panicked.
"Something's wrong. The baby. I think the baby's coming."
He dropped everything. The drive to the hospital should have taken 20 minutes. Ryan made it in 8, running every red light, his heart pounding harder than it had in any combat zone. He found Sarah in the emergency room, already on a gurney, a nurse checking her vitals while a doctor barked orders. "Are you the husband?"
"Yes. What's happening? Is she okay? Is the baby—"
"She's in labor, 3 weeks early. We need to get her to delivery, now." "Is something wrong?" The doctor hesitated. "Her blood pressure is elevated. The baby's heartbeat is irregular. We're monitoring both of them closely." Ryan grabbed Sarah's hand. She looked up at him, terrified.
"I'm scared,"
she whispered. "I know, but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere."
"Promise me."
"I promise." They wheeled her away. Ryan followed until a nurse stopped him at the delivery room door. "You'll have to wait here, sir. We'll come get you as soon as we can." The door closed. Ryan stood there, alone, staring at the white surface, feeling more helpless than he had ever felt in his life. 3 hours later, the door opened. The doctor emerged, his scrubs spotted with sweat, his face exhausted but calm. "Mr. Carter?" Ryan stood. "Is she okay? Is the baby—" "Your wife is stable. She lost some blood, but she's going to be fine." "And the baby?" The doctor smiled. "You have a son. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. He's small, but he's strong. Good lungs." He chuckled. "Very good lungs." You could hear him crying from the parking lot. Ryan's legs almost gave out. "Can I see them?" "Of course. Follow me." Sarah was propped up in bed, pale and exhausted, but smiling. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. Ryan approached slowly, almost afraid to breathe. "Hey," Sarah whispered. "Hey." She lifted the baby toward him. "Ryan, meet your son." He took the bundle carefully, cradling it against his chest. The baby was impossibly small, impossibly perfect, with a tuft of dark hair and tiny fingers that curled around Ryan's thumb. "He's beautiful," Ryan said, his voice cracking. "He looks like you." "Poor kid," Sarah laughed, a weak, tired sound, but real. Ryan sat on the edge of the bed, holding his son, looking at his wife, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. Victor Harrington, the corrupt cops, the threats, none of it mattered. This was what mattered. This moment, this family, this life they had built together against all odds. "What are we going to name him?" Sarah asked. Ryan looked down at the baby, at the tiny face that held all the possibility in the world. "James," he said, "after my father." Sarah smiled. "James Carter. I like it." "James," Ryan whispered, "I promise you something. I'm going to build a world where no one ever makes you feel small, where no one ever puts their hands on the people you love, where the bad guys don't win." He looked up at Sarah. "I promise." The next morning, Ryan stepped outside the hospital to get some air. His phone buzzed. A text from Ghost. "Got something. It's bigger than we thought. Much bigger. Call me when you can. Secure line only." Ryan looked back at the hospital window, where Sarah was sleeping with James in her arms. Then he looked at the phone. Whatever Ghost had found, it was about to change everything. He could feel it. The war was just beginning. Ryan waited until Sarah fell asleep before he made the call. He stepped into the hospital corridor, checked both directions, then ducked into an empty waiting room. His hands were steady as he dialed, but his heart was not. Ghost answered on the second ring. "You alone?" "Yeah." "Good. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to make you want to put a bullet in someone's head." Ryan sat down slowly. "Talk to me." Victor Harrington isn't just a rich bully with political connections. He's running an operation. A big one. Human trafficking, Carter. Young women, mostly from Central America. His family's shipping company brings them in. His construction business puts them to work. And when they're used up, Ghost paused. They disappear. Ryan's grip tightened on the phone. How long? At least 8 years, maybe longer. The missing maid you found? She wasn't the first. I've counted 17 women connected to Harrington Properties who vanished without a trace. 17 that I can confirm. The real number is probably triple that. And the cops? In his pocket. Mills, the one who grabbed your wife? He's been on Harrington's payroll for 6 years. Gets a nice bonus every time a complaint against Victor goes away. The younger one, Davidson, he's newer. Still learning which way to point his gun. Ryan closed his eyes. What about evidence? That's where it gets interesting. 3 years ago, a woman named Maria Santos worked as a housekeeper at the Harrington estate. She kept a journal, dates, names, license plates. She was building a case. What happened to her? Same thing that happens to everyone who gets too close. She disappeared, but her journal didn't. Her sister has it. She's been hiding for 3 years, too scared to come forward, but too stubborn to destroy what Maria gave her life to collect. Where is she? Riverside, 20 minutes from your house. Her name is Elena Rodriguez. She works at a laundromat on 5th Street. Cash only. No paper trail. She's been invisible for years. Ryan wrote down the address. I need to talk to her. Be careful. If Harrington finds out you're sniffing around, he won't stop at threats. The man has killed before, Carter, and he'll kill again. Let him try. Ghost laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's what I was afraid you'd say. Ryan hung up and stared at the wall. 17 women, maybe more, vanished, erased, forgotten. And Victor Harrington was still walking free, still kicking puppies, still putting his hands on pregnant women, still laughing while cops held his victims down. Not anymore. Ryan stood up. It was time to go to work. Sarah was awake when he returned. James was sleeping in the bassinet beside her bed, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. Where did you go? She asked. Just needed some air. Ryan. She knew him too well. What's going on? He sat on the edge of her bed and took her hand. I found something. About Harrington. What kind of something? The kind that explains why he thinks he can do whatever he wants. Sarah's face went pale. Ryan, please. We have a baby now. We can't. That's exactly why I have to do this. He squeezed her hand. What happened to you? What he did? It wasn't random. He's done it before. To other women. Women who didn't have anyone to protect them. Women who disappeared. Disappeared? Gone. No trace. No investigation. Nothing. Sarah pulled her hand back. You're scaring me. Good. Because I'm scared too. But not of him. He looked at James, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the world he had been born into. I'm scared of what happens if I do nothing. If I let him win. If I teach my son that men like Harrington, are too powerful to stop. And what about me? What about James? What happens to us if something happens to you? Ryan leaned forward and kissed her forehead. Nothing is going to happen to me. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise that whatever I do it for you, for him, for every woman that monster has hurt. Sarah was crying now. I hate this. I know. I hate that you're right. I know that too. She grabbed his shirt and pulled him close. You come back to me, Ryan Carter. You come back to both of us. Do you understand? I understand. Promise me. I promise. But even as he said it, he knew some promises were easier to make than to keep. 3 days later, Sarah and James came home. The house felt different now. Fuller. The cries of a newborn filled rooms that had been too quiet for too long. Ryan found himself waking at odd hours, not from nightmares, but from the sound of his son needing to be fed, needing to be changed, needing to know that someone was there. He was there, every time. But he was also planning. On the 4th day, he drove to Riverside. The laundromat on 5th Street was small and dingy, the kind of place that survived on regulars and discretion. Ryan parked across the street and watched for 20 minutes before going inside. A woman stood behind the counter, folding towels. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that had seen too much too early. When Ryan walked in, those eyes went straight to his hands, then his waist, checking for weapons. Elena Rodriguez? Her hands stopped moving. Who's asking? My name is Ryan Carter. I think we have a mutual enemy. Elena's face went blank. Professional. Practiced. I don't know what you're talking about. Victor Harrington. He hurt my wife, kicked my dog, threatened my family. Ryan stepped closer. And he killed your sister. The mask cracked. Elena's hands trembled. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Get out. I know about Maria. I know about the journal. And I know you've been hiding because you think no one will believe you. Ryan held her gaze. I believe you. You don't know anything. Then tell me. Help me understand. Help me stop him. Elena shook her head. You can't stop him. No one can. He has cops, judges, politicians. Everyone who should protect people like me, they protect him instead. Not everyone. You think you're different? You think because you were in the military, because you have muscles and a brave dog, that you can take down a man like Victor Harrington? Elena laughed bitterly. Maria thought she could too. She was smarter than both of us. And now she's dead. Ryan pulled out a chair and sat down. Tell me about her. Elena stared at him for a long moment. Then something in her broke, not collapsed, but released, like a dam that had held back a flood for too long. She sat across from him and began to talk. Maria had come to America 5 years ago, full of hope and dreams. A job at a wealthy estate, good pay, a path to citizenship. The agency that recruited her promised everything. They delivered nothing. The work was brutal, 18-hour days, no days off. The pay was docked for housing, for food, for the debt she supposedly owed for her travel. Within months, Maria realized she wasn't an employee. She was a prisoner. But Maria was smart. She watched. She listened. She wrote everything down in a journal she kept hidden in her mattress. Names of the women who came and went. License plates of the trucks that arrived at night. Conversations she overheard between Victor and his men. She was going to expose him, Elena said, her voice hollow. She had enough to bring him down. Trafficking, fraud, maybe even murder. She was going to take it to the FBI. What happened? Elena's hands clenched. Someone told him. A guard, maybe. A cop. I don't know. One night, Maria called me.
She was terrified. She said they were coming for her. She told me where she hid the journal, made me promise to keep it safe, to wait for the right moment.
And then?
And then she was gone. They said she ran away, went back to Guatemala. But Maria would never leave without telling me. Never.
Elena wiped her eyes.
They killed her. I know they did. And no one cared.
Ryan leaned forward. I care.
Why? You don't know us. You don't owe us anything.
Because 3 days ago, that man stood over my pregnant wife and laughed while his cops held her down. Because he kicked a puppy like it was garbage. Because he sent me a text telling me to enjoy my last weeks of peace. Ryan's voice hardened. And because my son was just born, and I'll be damned if I let him grow up in a world where men like Victor Harrington win. Elena studied him. Whatever she saw on his face must have convinced her, because she nodded slowly.
The journal is hidden. I can take you to it. But if we do this, if we go down this road, there's no turning back. Harrington will come for us, for everyone we love.
Let him come. Elena stood.
Follow me.
The journal was hidden in a storage unit on the outskirts of town, buried inside a box of old clothes beneath 3 years of dust and fear. Elena dug it out with shaking hands and passed it to Ryan. It was a simple composition notebook, the kind kids use in school. But inside, in Maria's careful handwriting, was dynamite. Dates, names, amounts, routes, everything Victor Harrington had done, documented in meticulous detail.
This is incredible, Ryan breathed. She was building a case, Elena said.
She knew no one would believe a poor immigrant girl against a rich American man. So she gathered proof. Enough proof that they couldn't ignore her. They ignored her anyway, because she never got to show anyone. Harrington's people found out before she could. Elena's voice cracked. I've been waiting 3 years for someone brave enough, or stupid enough, to help me finish what she started. Ryan closed the journal. You found him. That night, Ryan didn't go home. He called Sarah and told her he was working late. She knew he was lying, but she didn't push. She understood, even if she hated it. Instead, Ryan drove to a motel outside of town and spent 6 hours going through Maria's journal, cross-referencing her notes with what Ghost had found. The pieces fit together like a nightmare puzzle. Victor Harrington's shipping company, Harrington Logistics, brought containers into the port of Riverside 3 times a month. On paper, they carried auto parts, textiles, machinery. In reality, they carried women. The women were processed through a warehouse on the edge of town, Warehouse 9, according to Maria's notes, then distributed to various Harrington properties, the estate, construction sites, private homes of wealthy clients who paid for domestic services. The money flowed through shell companies, laundered through legitimate businesses, then deposited in offshore accounts. Millions of dollars, hundreds of lives. And at the center of it all, Victor Harrington, smiling his perfect smile, shaking hands with mayors and governors, untouchable. Ryan's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You're asking questions you shouldn't ask. You're talking to people you shouldn't talk to. Last warning, soldier. Walk away. Ryan typed back, No. The response came 30 seconds later. Then we'll have to be more persuasive. Ryan stared at the screen. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a photo. Sarah, holding James, standing at the window of their house. The photo had been taken today. Someone was watching his family. Ryan was out the door before he finished reading. He made the drive home in 12 minutes. He burst through the front door to find Sarah in the living room, startled, James crying in her arms.
Ryan, what's wrong?
Are you okay? Is he okay?
We're fine. What happened?
Ryan checked every window, every door, every closet. Max followed him, sensing the tension, hackles raised.
Ryan, you're scaring me.
He stopped, forced himself to breathe, walked back to Sarah and took her hands. Someone's been watching the house.
What?
They sent me a photo of you and James, taken from outside. Sarah's face went white.
Oh my God.
I need you to pack a bag. You and James are going to stay with your mother for a few days.
No.
Sarah, no, I'm not running. I'm not letting them scare us out of our home. This isn't about being scared. This is about keeping you safe.
And who keeps you safe? Who watches your back while you're playing hero?
Max. A dog, Ryan. You're going to war against a billionaire with a dog. I'm going to war with the truth. That's more powerful than any weapon. Sarah shook her head.
You really believe that?
I have to. She stared at him, tears streaming down her face. Then she did something he didn't expect. She laughed. What?
I married a crazy person.
She wiped her eyes. A beautiful, stubborn, impossible crazy person. Is that a yes?
That's a, I love you and I hate you, and if you die, I'm going to kill you myself.
She pulled him close.
Take me to my mother's, but you call me every day, every single day. Do you hear me?
I hear you.
And you bring yourself home. Whatever happens, you bring yourself home.
I will.
Promise me, Ryan.
I promise. He meant it, but promises were easy. Keeping them was the hard part. The next morning, Ryan dropped Sarah and James at her mother's house 2 towns over. He watched them go inside, watched the door close, watched the curtains twitch as Sarah looked back at him one last time. Then he drove away. He had work to do. His first stop was the county records office, where he spent 3 hours pulling property records, business filings, and zoning permits. Everything Maria had documented matched what was on file, and what wasn't. His second stop was the docks, where he watched Harrington logistics trucks load and unload cargo, noting times, license plates, and driver faces. His third stop was Warehouse 9. It sat on the edge of an industrial district, surrounded by chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Security cameras covered every angle. Guards patrolled the perimeter in shifts. Ryan watched from a distance, counting movements, timing rotations, memorizing patterns. Whatever was inside that warehouse, Harrington was protecting it with more than money. He was protecting it with fear. Ryan's phone buzzed. Ghost. I've got something else. 3 women escaped from a Harrington property in Atlanta 2 years ago. They testified to the FBI. You know what happened to the case? Tell me. Buried. The lead prosecutor got a phone call from someone in Washington. Next day, the case was dropped. The witnesses were deported, and everyone pretended it never happened. Harrington has federal connections? Looks that way. But here's the thing. The prosecutor who buried the case? She's running for state attorney general now. If the truth came out, it would destroy her career. Who is she? Her name is Patricia Vance, and I think she might be willing to make a deal. Ryan filed the name away. What kind of deal? The kind where she helps us take down Harrington in exchange for keeping her name out of it. That's not justice. No, it's politics. But sometimes you have to dance with the devil to catch a bigger one. Ryan thought about it. Thought about Maria, who died trying to do the right thing. Thought about Elena, who spent 3 years hiding because the system failed her. Thought about Sarah and James, vulnerable because he dared to challenge a man who believed himself above the law. Set up a meeting, he said. You sure? I'm sure. All right, I'll be in touch. Ryan hung up and looked at Warehouse 9 one more time. Whatever was inside those walls, whatever Harrington was hiding, he was going to find it. And when he did, he was going to tear the whole thing down. That night, Ryan returned to his empty house. Max greeted him at the door, tail wagging, unaware that everything had changed. The puppy, still healing from its bruised ribs, bounded over and licked Ryan's hand. He sat on the porch, watching the stars, thinking about the choices that had led him here. A year ago, he was halfway around the world, doing dangerous work in dangerous places. Now he was home, fighting a different kind of war, against a different kind of enemy. Same stakes, same consequences, same refusal to back down. His phone buzzed. Sarah. "Hey."
Hey yourself.
Her voice was tired, but warm.
James is asleep. Finally.
"How are you?"
Scared. Angry. Missing you.
A pause.
How are you?
The same.
Did you find anything?
Enough. More than enough.
What happens next?
Ryan looked at the house across the street, where a car he didn't recognize had been parked for the last hour. He couldn't see the driver, but he knew he was being watched. "Next, I make them regret ever touching you."
Ryan.
"I love you, Sarah."
I love you too.
He hung up. Across the street, the car's engine started. Headlights flicked on. The car pulled away slowly, deliberately, making sure Ryan saw it leave. A message. "We know where you are. We're watching." Ryan smiled. Good. Let them watch. Because tomorrow, he was going to give them something worth watching. He stood, walked inside, and closed the door. The war was coming, and he was ready. The meeting with Patricia Vance happened 2 days later, in a parking garage 40 miles from Riverside. Ryan arrived early. He always arrived early. He positioned himself where he could see every entrance, every exit, every shadow that moved wrong. Ghost stood beside him, a tall black man with gray at his temples and scars that told stories he never shared. They had served together in places that didn't exist on any map. They had saved each other's lives more times than either could count. "You sure about this?" Ghost asked. "No." "Good. The sure ones are the ones who get killed." A black sedan pulled into the garage. It circled once, twice, then parked 20 feet away. The driver stayed in the car. The rear door opened. Patricia Vance was exactly what Ryan expected.
Mid-50s, power suit, hair that cost more than his monthly rent. She walked like someone who had never been told no and didn't plan to start hearing it now.
Mr. Carter.
Her voice was ice wrapped in silk.
You're either very brave or very stupid.
"I've been told both."
I've read your file. Navy SEAL, 12 years of service, distinguished combat record. Medical discharge after an operation in Syria that officially never happened.
She studied him.
You're not a man who scares easily.
Neither are you.
No, but I'm a woman who knows when she's being blackmailed.
Ryan shook his head. "I'm not here to blackmail you. I'm here to offer you a choice."
What kind of choice?
"The kind where you help me take down Victor Harrington, and in return, I make sure no one ever knows you buried the Atlanta case." Vance's eyes flickered, just for a moment.
I don't know what you're talking about.
3 women escaped from a Harrington property. They testified to the FBI.
You were the lead prosecutor. Someone called you from Washington, and the next day, the case disappeared.
Ryan stepped closer. Those women were deported back to countries where Harrington's people were waiting for them. 2 of them are dead now. The 3rd is missing. Vance's face didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. Something that might have been shame. "I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice."
You don't understand. The people protecting Harrington, They're not local politicians or corrupt cops. They're federal. CIA. State Department. Men who make problems disappear with a phone call. Her voice dropped. They showed me photographs of my daughter at her college campus. They knew her class schedule, her boyfriend's name, the route she jogged every morning. Ghost stepped forward. They threatened your family? They didn't have to threaten. They just showed me they could. That was enough. Ryan felt his anger shift.
Not disappear. It never disappeared. But redirect. Vance wasn't the enemy. She was another victim, trapped in the same web, just at a different level. So help me destroy them, he said.
How?
The journal. Maria Santos documented everything. Names, dates, routes, money trails. Combined with what Ghost has pulled from federal databases, we have enough to blow Harrington's entire operation apart.
If you go to the press, they'll bury it. If you go to law enforcement, they'll bury you.
I know. That's why we're not going to either. Vance frowned.
Then what's your plan?
Ryan smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. We're going to live stream it. Everything. In real time. To every news outlet, every social media platform, every phone in America. We're going to make it impossible to bury.
That's insane.
That's why it might work. Vance stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed, a short, sharp sound that echoed off the concrete walls.
You really are crazy.
So I've been told. If this fails, we're all dead. If this fails, at least we tried, which is more than most people can say. Vance looked at Ghost, then back at Ryan. What do you need from me? Access. Harrington has federal protection, which means federal records. I need to know who's protecting him and why. Names, connections, leverage. That's going to take time. How much time? A week, maybe less if I call in some favors. You have 3 days. Vance's eyes hardened. Don't push me, Mr. Carter. I'm not pushing you. I'm warning you. Harrington knows we're coming. He's already watching my family. Every day we wait is a day he has to prepare. Ryan's voice dropped. Or to make someone else disappear. The words hung in the air. Vance nodded slowly. 3 days. I'll be in touch. She turned and walked back to her car. The sedan pulled away, taillights fading into the darkness. Ghost let out a breath. You trust her? No. Me neither. He paused. But sometimes you have to work with the snakes to kill the dragon. That's not how the saying goes. I know. I made it up. Ghost clapped him on the shoulder. Let's get to work. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. Ryan mapped every entrance and exit to Warehouse 9. He timed the guard rotations, identified the weak points in their coverage, calculated the windows where he could move unseen. Ghost worked his contacts, pulling strings that stretched from Washington to Langley to places that didn't officially exist. The picture that emerged was worse than either of them had imagined. Victor Harrington wasn't just protected by corrupt cops and local politicians. He was an asset. His trafficking operation provided cover for intelligence activities, money laundering, document forgery, transportation of people who needed to disappear. In exchange, certain agencies looked the other way. This goes all the way up, Ghost said, spreading documents across Ryan's kitchen table. Senators, agency directors, at least one Supreme Court justice who used Harrington's services to make an embarrassing problem go away. So we're not just fighting Harrington. No, we're fighting the entire machine that keeps him running. Ryan looked at the documents. Names he recognized. Faces he had seen on television. People who smiled at cameras and talked about justice and freedom while profiting from human misery. Good. Good? The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Ghost shook his head. Or the harder they hit back. Then we hit first. On the third day, Vance delivered. A flash drive containing internal communications, financial records, and the names of every federal official connected to Harrington's operation. It was a roadmap of corruption that stretched across a decade.
"This is enough to bring down the whole house of cards," Ghost said, scrolling through the files. "Not yet." Ryan picked up his phone. "We still need proof of what's happening inside that warehouse. Documents can be dismissed. Testimony can be discredited. But video is harder to deny."
"So you're going in?"
"Tonight."
"Alone?"
Ryan looked at Max, who was watching him with those intelligent amber eyes, already sensing what was coming. "Not alone." Ghost sighed.
"I knew you were going to say that."
"You can run the stream from here. Everything I capture goes straight to the cloud. If something happens to me,
I release everything."
everything. The journal, the files, Vance's documents, all of it."
"And if you don't come back?"
Ryan didn't answer. He didn't have to. Ghost extended his hand.
"It's been an honor, brother."
Ryan shook it. "See you on the other side." He walked out the door. Max fell in beside him. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. It was a beautiful evening, a good evening to end a war. Ryan reached the perimeter of Warehouse 9 at 11 p.m. The guards had changed shifts an hour ago. Fresh eyes, but tired minds. They followed their patterns like clockwork, never varying, never questioning. Predictable. Predictable got people killed. Ryan moved through the darkness like he was part of it. Max stayed close, his black and tan coat blending with the shadows, his breathing silent, his focus absolute. They reached the fence at the north corner, where a security camera had a 3-second blind spot during its rotation. Ryan cut through the chain link, slipped inside, and pressed himself against the wall. His earpiece crackled. Ghost's voice, distant but clear. "You're in. Camera 2 is sweeping your direction in 45 seconds. Ryan moved. He crossed 20 feet of open ground, ducked behind a shipping container, and waited for the camera to pass. When it did, he moved again, sliding along the wall toward the service entrance Maria had documented in her journal. The door was locked. Electronic keypad, same as the files had indicated. Ryan pulled out a bypass tool Ghost had provided. Military grade, classified, definitely not available to civilians, and went to work. 30 seconds later, the lock clicked open. He was inside. The warehouse was dark, but not empty. He could hear voices somewhere deeper in the building. Men talking, laughing. The sound of a television playing a sports game. Guards. At least 3 based on the voices. Ryan moved toward them, Max at his heels, recording everything on the body camera strapped to his chest. He found the guards in a break room, feet up, beers open, watching football. They never saw him pass. The basement door was exactly where Maria had said it would be, behind a false panel in the storage area. Ryan found the hidden latch, pulled, and watched the panel swing open to reveal a steel door with a heavy electronic lock. "Ghost, I need you to kill the security system. Everything." "On it. 30 seconds. Ryan counted in his head. 28, 29, 30. The lights flickered, the lock clicked, and Ryan pulled the door open. The smell hit him first. Sweat, fear, desperation. The stench of too many people in too small a space for too long. Then he saw them. 6 women huddled in 3 cells, barely larger than closets. Their eyes were hollow, their skin was pale. Their wrists bore the marks of restraints. One of them, young, maybe 15, looked up at Ryan and flinched, raising her arms to protect her face. "Please," she whimpered. "Please don't hurt me." Ryan knelt slowly, keeping his hands visible. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help. Do you understand? I'm going to get you out." The girl stared at him. Behind her, The other women stirred, hope and fear fighting for control of their faces. "All of you," Ryan said. "I'm getting all of you out. But you have to trust me. Can you do that?" Slowly, one by one, they nodded. Ryan moved to the cell doors. The locks were simpler than the main entrance, manual, not electronic. He picked them in seconds. "Follow me. Stay close. Stay quiet." He led them up the stairs, through the storage area, past the break room where the guards were still watching television, oblivious. They were 10 feet from the service entrance when the lights came back on, and Victor Harrington stepped out of the shadows. "Mr. Carter." His voice was calm, almost amused. "I had a feeling you'd try something stupid." Behind him, Officer Mills emerged with 2 armed guards. Their weapons were drawn, aimed at Ryan's chest. The women screamed. Ryan pushed them behind him, his body between them and the guns. "Let them go," Ryan said. "This is between us." "This stopped being between us when you decided to play hero." Victor stepped closer, his eyes cold, his smile colder. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The people I work with don't forgive mistakes. They don't allow loose ends." "Then they're going to have a lot of cleaning up to do, because right now, everything in this warehouse is being streamed live to every major news outlet in the country." Victor's smile flickered. "You're bluffing." "Check your phone." Mills pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and went pale. "Sir, it's everywhere. The video is everywhere." Victor's face changed. The mask of control cracked, revealing something uglier underneath. Rage. Pure, burning rage. "Kill him." Mills raised his weapon, and Max hit him like a missile. 80 pounds of muscle and fury drove Mills into the wall. The gun discharged, the shot going wild, punching through the ceiling. The 2 guards spun toward the dog, but Ryan was already moving. He tackled the first guard, driving him to the ground, disarming him in one fluid motion. The second guard tried to aim, but Max was there, jaws locking around his arm, dragging him down. Victor ran. Ryan wanted to chase him, but the women were screaming, the guards were groaning, and Mills was reaching for his backup weapon. Ryan kicked it out of his hand and put him down with a strike to the temple. "Go!" he shouted at the women. "The door! Run!" They ran. Ryan followed, Max at his side, leaving the chaos behind. They burst through the service entrance into the night air. The women scattered, crying, stumbling, but free. Ryan counted them. 5. 6. Wait, 6? There had been 6 women in the cells. But one was missing. The girl, the young one, Rosa. "Where is she?" Ryan grabbed one of the women. "The young girl. Where did she go?" "She fell, on the stairs. She couldn't keep up." Ryan's blood went cold. He turned back toward the warehouse. Fire. Orange light flickered in the windows. Smoke poured from the service entrance. Victor had torched the building. Ryan ran. "Ghost, call fire and rescue, now!" "Already done. ETA 8 minutes. "I don't have 8 minutes." He plunged into the smoke. The heat was immediate and overwhelming. Fire had spread through the storage area, feeding on cardboard and chemicals. The air was thick with poison. Ryan pulled his shirt over his nose and pushed deeper. "Rosa!" No answer. "Rosa, where are you?" A cough. Faint. To his left. Ryan found her curled at the bottom of the basement stairs, her ankle twisted, her face streaked with soot and tears. "I can't walk," she sobbed. "I can't." "I've got you." He lifted her in his arms and ran. The fire was everywhere now, closing in from all sides. The path he had used was blocked. Flames licking at the walls, ceiling starting to buckle. Ryan changed direction, searching for another way out. Any way out. His lungs burned, His eyes streamed. Rosa was coughing, choking, her small body shaking in his arms. "Stay with me," he gasped. "We're almost there." A beam crashed down behind them. The floor groaned. Ryan saw a window, small, high, barely large enough. He set Rosa down, grabbed a piece of pipe, and smashed the glass. "Go! Climb through!" "I can't!" "You can! I'll lift you! Go!" He boosted her up, shoving her through the window, ignoring the glass that cut his hands, ignoring the fire that roared closer. Rosa tumbled through, landing on grass outside. Ryan tried to follow, but the window was too small. His shoulders wouldn't fit. He was trapped. "Ghost!" The floor collapsed. Ryan fell. He hit the basement level hard, debris raining down around him. Something heavy struck his leg, and pain exploded through his body. He couldn't move. The fire was coming. He could feel it, hear it, taste it. This was it. This was how it ended. He thought of Sarah, her smile, her laugh, the way she looked at him like he was the only person in the world. He thought of James, his tiny hands, his perfect face, the son he would never watch grow up. He thought of all the things he had promised and would never keep. "I'm sorry," he whispered. And then, through the smoke and flames, he heard barking. Max. The German shepherd appeared at the edge of the hole, barking furiously, refusing to leave. "Go!" Ryan croaked. "Get out of here! Go!" Max didn't go. Instead, he jumped. He landed beside Ryan, whining, nosing at his face, trying to drag him toward a gap in the debris. "I can't move. My leg." Max bit down on Ryan's sleeve and pulled. The pain was excruciating. Ryan screamed, but inch by inch he moved. The fire was 10 feet away, 8 feet, 5. Max kept pulling. Ryan saw it, a drainage grate in the floor, leading to a tunnel beneath the warehouse. An escape route Maria hadn't known about. He dragged himself toward it, Max pulling, the fire reaching, the heat unbearable. His fingers found the grate. He pulled. It didn't move. He pulled harder. It gave. Ryan fell into darkness as the fire roared overhead. He crawled. Max pushed him from behind, refusing to let him stop, refusing to let him die. The tunnel was narrow, suffocating, endless. But it was cool. It was safe. It was survival. Ryan crawled until he couldn't crawl anymore, until his arms gave out and his vision blurred and the world faded to black. The last thing he heard was Max barking. The last thing he felt was fur against his face. The last thing he thought was, "Sarah, James, I'm coming home." Then nothing. He woke to sirens, voices shouting, hands lifting him, bright lights that hurt his eyes. "We've got him! He's alive!" Sarah's face appeared above him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Ryan! Ryan, can you hear me?" He tried to speak, coughed instead. "Don't talk. You're okay. You're going to be okay." He reached for her hand, found it, held on. "James?" he managed. "He's fine. He's with my mother. He's perfect." Ryan closed his eyes. He had kept his promise. He had come home. Beside him, Max lay on a stretcher, oxygen mask over his muzzle, tail wagging weakly. Ryan reached out and touched his partner's head. "Good boy," he whispered. "Good boy." Max's tail wagged harder. Somewhere in the distance, the warehouse burned. And in cities across America, millions of people watched as Victor Harrington's empire collapsed, one video frame at a time. The war wasn't over, but tonight, for the first time, the right side was winning. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and exhaustion. Ryan opened his eyes to find sunlight streaming through half-closed blinds, painting stripes across white sheets. His leg throbbed beneath layers of bandages. His lungs ached with every breath. His hands were wrapped in gauze, cuts from the window glass still burning beneath the fabric. But he was alive. Sarah sat in the chair beside his bed, James sleeping in her arms. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, dark circles under her eyes, hair tangled, face pale. When she saw him stir, she let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "You're awake." "How long?" 18 hours. She shifted James to one arm and reached for Ryan's hand with the other. "The doctor said you inhaled a lot of smoke. Your leg is fractured in 2 places. You have second-degree burns on your back." Her voice cracked. "They said you shouldn't be alive." Ryan squeezed her hand. "I had help." "Max," Sarah smiled through her tears. "He's down the hall. The vet said he's going to be fine." Some burns on his paws, smoke inhalation, but he's already trying to get off the examination table. "That's my boy." "Ryan," Sarah's face grew serious. "Do you know what happened after the fire?" "Tell me." "The video went everywhere. Millions of people watched. The FBI showed up within hours. They've arrested Officer Mills, the guards from the warehouse, half a dozen people connected to Harrington's operation." She paused. "But Victor got away." Ryan's chest tightened. "What?" "He disappeared before the fire department arrived. They found his car at the airport, but he never got on a plane. Nobody knows where he is." Ryan tried to sit up. Pain shot through his body, but he pushed through it. You have to rest." Sarah pressed him back down gently. "The FBI is looking for him. Ghost is tracking every account, every contact. They'll find him. He won't let this go. He'll come for us, for the women who escaped, for Elena." "Elena is safe."
Ghost moved her to a secure location last night. "And Rosa? The girl from the basement?" "She's in protective custody. ICE tried to deport her, but the FBI intervened. She's going to testify." Ryan closed his eyes. The weight of everything pressed down on him. The fear, the anger, the desperate hope that what he had done would actually matter. "The other women?" "All 6 are safe. They're being cared for. Their families have been notified." Sarah's voice softened. "You saved them, Ryan. You did that." "I burned down a building and almost got myself killed." "You exposed a monster. You gave those women their lives back." She leaned forward and kissed his forehead. "You're a hero." "I don't feel like one." "Heroes never do." The door opened. A woman in a dark suit stepped inside, her badge glinting in the morning light. She was tall, composed, with gray hair pulled back in a practical knot, and eyes that had seen too much darkness to be surprised by any of it. "Mr. Carter, I'm Special Agent Laura Bennett, FBI Human Trafficking Task Force. I've been waiting to speak with you." Ryan nodded. Sarah stood, holding James close. "I'll give you some privacy." "Stay," Ryan said. "Whatever she has to say, you should hear it too." Agent Bennett waited for Sarah to settle back into her chair, then pulled up a second seat and sat facing Ryan. "First, I want to thank you. What you did last night. It's given us more evidence than 3 years of investigation. The video footage, Maria Santos's journal, the files your friend provided. We have enough to prosecute dozens of people connected to Harrington's network." "But not Harrington himself." Bennett's expression tightened. "Victor Harrington has extensive resources and connections at the highest levels of government. He's been an asset to certain agencies for over a decade. That protection made him untouchable." "Made?"
The exposure last night changed everything. When 15 million people watch a man order the execution of a Navy SEAL and the burning of kidnapped women, political protection becomes a liability. Bennett leaned forward. His federal sponsors are scrambling to distance themselves. Senator Morrison has already issued a statement condemning human trafficking. Director Collins called a press conference this morning to announce a renewed commitment to justice. Ryan laughed bitterly. The same people who protected him are now pretending they didn't? That's how the game is played, Mr. Carter. The wind shifts, and suddenly everyone is on the right side of history. And Harrington? He's gone underground. We believe he's trying to reach a country without extradition treaties. We have teams at every airport, every border crossing, every private airfield within 500 miles. Bennett paused. We'll find him. When? Soon. That's not good enough. Bennett held his gaze. I understand your frustration, but Victor Harrington is no longer just a local criminal. He's an international fugitive. Every law enforcement agency in the country is looking for him. Every news channel is broadcasting his face. He can't hide forever. Ryan wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. The hunt for Harrington was out of his hands now. All he could do was trust the system he had spent his life serving. Trust. The hardest thing in the world. What about the women? He asked. What happens to them? They've been granted temporary protective status. They'll be allowed to remain in the country while the investigation continues. Several have already agreed to testify. Bennett's voice softened slightly. Rosa, the young girl you carried out of the fire. She wants to see you. She asked for you by name. Ryan felt something shift in his chest. Bring her. When you're stronger. Bring her now. Bennett studied him for a moment, then nodded. I'll make the arrangements. She stood and headed for the door, then paused. Mr. Carter, what you did last night, it wasn't just brave, it was necessary. The system failed those women for years. You didn't. She left. Sarah reached for Ryan's hand again. She's right, you know. About what? The system failing. The people who should have protected those women, the police, the government, all of it. They failed. But you didn't. She pressed his hand to her lips. You never do. Ryan didn't respond. He was thinking about Victor Harrington, out there somewhere, planning his next move. The war wasn't over. Not yet. Rosa came that afternoon. She was small for 15, thin from months of malnutrition, with dark hair that hung limp around a face still marked by fear. But when she saw Ryan, her eyes filled with something else. Hope. Mr. Ryan. Just Ryan. She stood in the doorway, uncertain, trembling slightly. A social worker hovered behind her, ready to intervene if needed. Come here, Ryan said gently. It's okay. Rosa crossed the room slowly, like she was walking through a dream. When she reached his bedside, she stopped, staring at him with wide eyes. You saved me. You saved yourself. I just carried you. I couldn't walk. The fire was everywhere. I thought... Her voice broke. I thought I was going to die. But you didn't. Because of you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Because you came back for me. Ryan reached out and took her hand. It was small, fragile, shaking. Rosa, listen to me. What happened to you, what those people did, it wasn't your fault. None of it. And it's over now. Do you understand? It's over. But Mr. Victor will be caught, I promise you. He will pay for what he did. Rosa looked at him with eyes that had seen too much darkness. How can you promise that? Because I don't know how to give up. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something Ryan didn't expect. She hugged him, her arms wrapped around his neck, her face buried in his shoulder, her body shaking with sobs she had held back for months. Ryan held her carefully, mindful of his injuries, letting her cry.
"Thank you,"
she whispered.
"Thank you, thank you, thank you."
"You're going to be okay," he said. "I promise. You're going to be okay." He meant it, and for the first time since the fire, he believed it might be true. 3 days later, Ryan was discharged from the hospital. His leg was in a cast, his hands were still bandaged. Every step sent pain shooting through his body, but he was walking, and that was enough. Sarah drove him home. The house looked different in the daylight, smaller somehow, but warmer. The peeling paint and sagging porch didn't matter. What mattered was inside. Max was waiting at the door, tail wagging furiously, whining with excitement. His paws were bandaged, his fur still patchy from burns, but his eyes were bright and alert. Ryan knelt, slowly, painfully, and wrapped his arms around the dog.
"Hey, buddy. I missed you too."
Max licked his face, his entire body wiggling with joy. The puppy bounded over, clumsy and eager, pawing at Ryan's leg until he scooped it up with one arm.
"You too, little guy. You too."
Sarah stood in the doorway, James in her arms, watching with tears in her eyes.
"Welcome home."
Ryan looked at his family, his wife, his son, his dogs, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. It lasted 3 hours. Ryan was sitting on the couch, James sleeping on his chest, when his phone buzzed. Ghost. "Tell me you found him." "We found something." Ghost's voice was tense. "Harrington chartered a private boat from a marina in Virginia. He's heading for international waters."
"When?"
"Now. He left 30 minutes ago."
"Can the Coast Guard intercept?"
"They're scrambling, but he's got a head start. If he reaches international waters before they catch him..."
"He's gone."
"Yeah." Ryan's jaw tightened. After everything, the fire, the women, the live stream, Victor Harrington was going to escape. He was going to sail away to some country without extradition and live out his days in comfort while his victims rebuilt their shattered lives. Number Ryan handed James to Sarah. "I have to go."
"Ryan, your leg."
"I know." He grabbed his phone, his keys. "Ghost, where's the marina?" "Norfolk, 2 hours south." "I'll be there in 90 minutes."
"Ryan, what are you going to do?"
"Whatever I have to." He was out the door before Sarah could stop him. The drive was agony. Every bump, every turn, every acceleration sent pain screaming through his fractured leg. Ryan gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white, pushing the speedometer past 90, past 100, weaving through traffic like his life depended on it. Maybe it did. He reached the marina in 83 minutes. Coast Guard boats were already in the water, racing toward the horizon. News helicopters circled overhead. Police cars lined the docks. And standing at the edge of the pier, surrounded by federal agents, was Agent Bennett. Ryan limped toward her. "Where is he?" 3 miles out and running." Bennett pointed toward the water. "The Coast Guard is closing in, but he's got a fast boat." "He's going to make it." "Maybe. Maybe not." "That's not good enough." Bennett turned to face him. "Mr. Carter, I understand your frustration, but this is a federal operation. You need to let us handle it." "Like you handled it for the past 10 years?" Her expression flickered. "That's not fair." "Fair?" Ryan's voice rose. "You want to talk about fair? Those women spent months in that basement. Rosa is 15 years old. Maria Santos died trying to expose him. And now he's going to sail into the sunset because the Coast Guard can't drive a boat fast enough?" We're doing everything we can.
It's not enough. The words echoed across the marina. Agents turned to look. Reporters raised their cameras. Ryan didn't care. I made a promise, he said, his voice dropping to something low and dangerous. I promised Rosa that he would pay. I promised Elena that her sister's death would mean something. I promised my wife that the world would be safer for our son. He stepped closer to Bennett. I keep my promises. Bennett held his gaze for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. Look. Ryan turned toward the water. The Coast Guard cutters had surrounded Harrington's boat. Helicopters hovered overhead. A voice boomed across a loudspeaker, ordering the vessel to stop. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Harrington's boat slowed, stopped, surrendered. We got him, Bennett said quietly. Ryan watched as armed officers boarded the vessel, watched as a figure in a white shirt was led onto the deck in handcuffs, watched as Victor Harrington, the man who had kicked his puppy, humiliated his wife, killed 17 women, and tried to burn him alive, was finally, irrevocably caught. We got him, Ryan repeated. His legs gave out. He sat down hard on the dock, pain and relief and exhaustion crashing over him in waves he couldn't control. Bennett knelt beside him. Mr. Carter, are you all right? Ryan laughed. It was a strange sound, half sob, half triumph. I'm fine. I'm fine. He wasn't fine. He was broken and burned and barely holding together. But for the first time in weeks, he felt like everything might actually be okay. The arrest of Victor Harrington was the top story on every news channel in the country. Within hours, the details emerged. The women he had trafficked, the officials he had bribed, the crimes he had committed while the world looked the other way. Officer Mills turned state's evidence, naming every corrupt cop, every paid politician, every federal agent who had helped protect Harrington's operation. Arrests followed, dozens of them, spreading across state lines like falling dominoes. Senator Morrison resigned. Director Collins was placed on administrative leave. 3 judges were removed from the bench pending investigation. The entire house of cards came crashing down. And at the center of it all, one name kept appearing. Ryan Carter. The Navy SEAL who had refused to look away. The man who had taken on a monster and won. Elena came to see him a week later. She stood in the doorway of his house, holding a worn composition notebook in her hands. Maria's journal. I wanted to give you this, she said quietly. Elena, that belongs to you. It's all you have left of her. No, Elena shook her head. Maria would have wanted you to have it. She believed that someday someone would be brave enough to finish what she started. Her eyes filled with tears. You were that someone. Ryan took the journal carefully. It felt heavier than it should, weighted with sacrifice, with courage, with a young woman's desperate hope that the truth would matter. She's a hero, Ryan said. Maria, she's the reason any of this happened. She was my sister. Elena smiled through her tears. And now, because of you, the world knows what she did, what she died for. What will you do now? Start over. Get my life back. Elena straightened her shoulders. I applied to nursing school. I want to help people, like Maria wanted to help people, like you helped us. Ryan extended his hand. Elena took it. Thank you, she said. Thank you, he replied, for being brave enough to trust me. Elena left. Ryan sat on the porch, Maria's journal in his lap, watching the sunset over a world that had changed. Changed because one woman
had the courage to write the truth.
Changed because another woman had the courage to keep it safe. Changed because he had the courage to act. Sarah joined him, James in her arms. She sat beside him and leaned her head on his shoulder.
"It's over,"
she said softly. "Is it?"
"The trial will take months, maybe years. But Victor Harrington is never getting out of prison. The people who protected him are going to prison too."
She looked up at him.
"You won, Ryan. It's over."
Ryan looked at his wife, at his son, at Max stretched out at his feet, at the puppy chasing fireflies in the fading light. "Yeah," he said finally. "I guess it is." But even as he said it, he knew the truth. Men like Victor Harrington weren't rare. They existed everywhere, in boardrooms and courtrooms, in police stations and government buildings. They hid behind money and power and silence, doing terrible things to people who couldn't fight back. This victory was real, but it wasn't the end. It was a beginning. His phone buzzed.
Agent Bennett. "Mr. Carter, I wanted to let you know, Harrington is talking. He's naming names, trying to cut a deal. Some of the people he's identified. Let's just say the investigation is about to get a lot bigger."
"How big?"
"Big enough that we're going to need help. People who can go places we can't, see things we'd miss."
Bennett paused.
"People like you."
Ryan looked at Sarah. She was watching him, her expression unreadable. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." He hung up. Sarah didn't say anything. She didn't have to. They sat together in the fading light, surrounded by their family, their home, their hard-won peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new choices. But tonight, they had each other. And that was enough. Max lifted his head and rested it on Ryan's knee. The puppy gave up on fireflies and curled up beside him. James made a soft sound in his sleep, a sound of perfect contentment. Ryan closed his eyes and breathed. For the first time in weeks, he felt whole. For the first time in years, he felt home. 6 months passed like water through open hands. Ryan's leg healed. The burns on his back faded to silver scars that Sarah traced with her fingers some nights, reminding him how close he had come to never coming home. The nightmares came less often now. Flames and screaming replaced by quieter dreams of his son's laughter, his wife's voice, his dog's steady breathing beside the bed. James was crawling now, pulling himself across the living room floor with determined grunts, reaching for everything, afraid of nothing. He had Sarah's eyes and Ryan's stubborn jaw, and when he smiled, the whole world stopped. The house had been repaired. Fresh paint covered the peeling walls. The porch no longer sagged. Neighbors who had once been strangers now waved from their yards, stopped by with casseroles, asked how the baby was doing. The community that had ignored Victor Harrington's crimes for years had found its conscience, late but real. Ryan stood on that fixed porch now, watching the sunrise, coffee in hand, Max at his feet. The old German shepherd moved slower these days, his muzzle graying, his joints stiff in the morning cold. But his eyes were still sharp, still watchful, still ready. The puppy, not so much a puppy anymore, bounded across the yard, chasing birds he would never catch, living in a present tense that dogs understood better than humans ever could. Sarah appeared in the doorway, James on her hip. "You're up early."
"Couldn't sleep."
"The trial?" Ryan nodded. Today was the day. After 6 months of motions and delays and legal maneuvering, Victor Harrington's trial was finally beginning. Ryan had been called as a witness. So had Elena. So had Rosa. So had 17 other women whose names the world now knew. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked. "No." He turned to face her. "But I'm going anyway." She crossed the porch and kissed him, soft and slow. "That's what I love about you. You're never ready, and you always show up." "Learned it from you." "Liar." He smiled. For months after the fire, smiling had felt foreign, like a language he'd forgotten how to speak. Now it came easier. Not easy, never easy, but easier. "I should go," he said. "Ghost is picking me up in 20 minutes." "Be careful." "It's a courthouse, not a war zone." Sarah's eyes darkened. Were the people Harrington is connected to? It might as well be. She wasn't wrong. Ghost arrived in a black SUV with tinted windows, and a look on his face that Ryan had learned to read years ago. Something was wrong. "What is it?" "Got word this morning. Harrington's lawyers filed a motion to dismiss. They're claiming the evidence was obtained illegally. The live stream, Maria's journal, the files Vance provided. All of it." Ryan's blood went cold. "Can they do that?" "They're trying. The judge is hearing arguments this morning before the trial begins. If the evidence gets thrown out, then Harrington walks." Ghost's jaw tightened, and everyone who helped him walks too. Ryan climbed into the SUV. His hands were steady, but his heart was not. 6 months of healing, 6 months of hoping, 6 months of believing that justice would finally be served. And now, in the span of a single hearing, it could all disappear. The courthouse was surrounded by cameras. Reporters lined the steps, microphones thrust forward, questions shouted over the noise of the crowd. Protesters held signs demanding justice. Counter-protesters held signs demanding Harrington's release. Police in riot gear formed a barrier between the two groups, their faces blank, their hands on their weapons. Ryan pushed through the chaos, Ghost at his side, ignoring the voices calling his name. Inside, the marble halls echoed with footsteps and whispered conversations. Lawyers in expensive suits conferred in corners. Families of victims huddled together, their faces drawn with anxiety and hope. Ryan found Elena near the courtroom doors. She looked different than she had 6 months ago. Stronger. Her hair was shorter, her posture straighter, her eyes clearer. She was enrolled in nursing school now, working part-time at a clinic, rebuilding a life that had been stolen from her. "You heard?" she asked. "Ghost told me." "If they dismiss the evidence, they won't." "How do you know?" Ryan looked at the courtroom doors. "Because I won't let them." The hearing began at 9 a.m. Judge Catherine Morrison, no relation to the disgraced senator, presided from the bench with the calm authority of someone who had spent 30 years separating truth from lies. She was in her 60s, with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Harrington's lead attorney, a man named Richard Crane, stood before her with the confidence of someone who had never lost a case. "Your Honor, the evidence presented by the prosecution was obtained through illegal means. The live stream was conducted without a warrant. The journal was stolen property. The federal documents were leaked by individuals who violated their oaths of office." Crane spread his hands. "The fruit of the poison tree, Your Honor. All of it must be excluded." The prosecutor, a woman named Diana Torres, rose to respond. She was young, maybe 35, with dark hair and a fire in her eyes that reminded Ryan of Maria Santos. "Your Honor, the defense is attempting to use legal technicalities to obscure the fundamental truth of this case. Victor Harrington trafficked human beings. He imprisoned women. He ordered the deaths of those who tried to expose him." Torres stepped forward. "The evidence before this court was gathered by private citizens acting in good faith to expose crimes that law enforcement had ignored for a decade. To exclude that evidence would be to reward the very corruption that allowed these crimes to continue. Judge Morrison listened without expression. When both attorneys finished, she turned to Ryan. "Mr. Carter, you're the one who conducted the live stream that night. Is that correct?" Ryan stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "And you entered Warehouse 9 without a warrant, without law enforcement authorization, without any legal standing to conduct a search?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Why?" The question hung in the air. Ryan felt every eye in the courtroom on him. The lawyers, the reporters, the families, Harrington himself, watching from the defense table with cold hatred. "Because no one else would." Morrison's eyebrow rose. "Explain." For 10 years, women disappeared into Victor Harrington's properties. They were trafficked, enslaved, and, when they tried to escape or expose him, they were killed. Maria Santos documented everything. She tried to do the right thing, and she died for it. Her sister spent 3 years hiding, terrified, waiting for someone brave enough to help her. Ryan's voice hardened. "I went to the police. They were on Harrington's payroll. I gathered evidence. The system that should have protected those women had failed them at every level." He looked at Judge Morrison. "So yes, I entered that warehouse without a warrant. I live-streamed what I found to the world, because I knew that if I handed it to the authorities, it would be buried like everything else. I broke the rules because the rules were designed to protect men like Victor Harrington, not the women he destroyed." The courtroom was silent. Morrison studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to Crane. "Mr. Crane, your client is accused of human trafficking, kidnapping, assault, arson, and conspiracy to commit murder. These are not minor infractions. These are crimes against humanity. Your Honor, regardless of the severity of the accusations—" "I'm not finished." Morrison's voice cut like a blade. "The evidence before this court includes testimony from 17 survivors, financial records tracing millions of dollars through shell companies, and video footage of your client ordering the execution of a Navy SEAL veteran. Are you suggesting that this court should ignore all of that because a desperate man broke a window to save lives?" Crane hesitated. "The law is clear, Your Honor. Evidence obtained illegally. The law is also clear that justice must be served." Morrison leaned forward. "I've reviewed every piece of evidence in this case. I've read Maria Santos's journal. I've watched the live stream footage. And I've seen the faces of the women who survived Victor Harrington's operation." She paused. "I will not exclude evidence that exposes the truth simply because the truth was inconvenient for the powerful people who tried to hide it." Crane's face went pale. "Your Honor, motion denied." Morrison struck her gavel. "The trial will proceed as scheduled. Court is in recess for 30 minutes. The courtroom erupted. Ryan sank back into his seat, his heart pounding, his hands shaking. Elena grabbed his arm, tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she whispered. "You did it." "The trial hasn't started yet." "But the evidence stays. They have to face what they did." She looked at him with something like wonder. "Maria would be so proud." Ryan thought about the young woman he had never met, who had died trying to do what he had done, who had written the truth in a composition notebook and hidden it in a mattress, believing that someday, somehow, it would matter. It mattered now. It mattered more than she could have ever known. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witness after witness took the stand. The women Harrington had trafficked told their stories: the recruitment, the imprisonment, the abuse, the despair. Their voices shook, but they did not break. They had survived too much to break now. Elena testified about her sister, about the journal, about the 3 years she had spent hiding, waiting, hoping. Rosa testified about the basement, about the fire, about the man in the Navy uniform who had carried her through the flames. Ghost testified about the federal connections, the money trails, the web of corruption that had protected Harrington for a decade. Patricia Vance testified, reluctantly, under subpoena, about the pressure she had received to bury the Atlanta case, about the photographs of her daughter, about the fear that had made her complicit in evil. And Ryan testified about that day at the gate, about Sarah being grabbed by corrupt cops, about the puppy being kicked, about the text message that had said, "Enjoy your last few weeks of peace." "What did you do when you received that message?" Torres asked. "I decided that I wasn't going to be afraid anymore." "Why?" Ryan looked at Harrington, who was watching him with dead eyes. "Because fear is how men like him win. They count on good people being too scared to fight back. They count on the system protecting them. They count on the world looking the other way." He paused. "I looked, and I didn't look away." The jury deliberated for 4 days. 4 days of waiting. 4 days of pacing. 4 days of jumping every time his phone buzzed. Sarah stayed close. James stayed closer, seeming to sense his father's tension, reaching for him with small hands that demanded nothing but presence. Max never left his side. On the 5th day, the verdict came. Ryan sat in the courtroom, Sarah beside him, her hand gripping his so tightly he could feel her pulse. Elena sat behind them with Rosa, both of them trembling. The foreman stood, an older man with white hair and steady hands. "On the count of human trafficking, we find the defendant guilty." Elena sobbed. "On the count of kidnapping, we find the defendant guilty." Rosa clutched Elena's arm. "On the count of arson, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty." 37 counts, 37 verdicts. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Victor Harrington sat motionless as the words washed over him. His face was blank, his eyes empty. The man who had believed himself untouchable had finally touched the thing he feared most: consequences. Judge Morrison scheduled sentencing for the following month. But everyone in that courtroom knew the truth. Victor Harrington was never going to see the outside of a prison again. Ryan walked out of the courthouse into blinding sunlight. The cameras were there. The reporters were there. The crowds were there, bigger now, louder, unified in a way they hadn't been before. Someone started clapping, then someone else, then the whole crowd. Ryan stopped, overwhelmed, uncertain. Sarah squeezed his hand. "They're clapping for you." "They shouldn't be." "Why not?" "Because I didn't do this alone. Maria did it. Elena did it. Rosa did it. Every woman who testified did it." He looked at the crowd, the faces full of hope, full of gratitude, full of something that looked like faith restored. "They're the heroes, not me." "Then be their voice," Sarah said softly. "Tell them." Ryan looked at her, at the reporters waiting with microphones, at the world watching, hungry for something to believe in. He stepped forward. "I'm not a hero," he said, and the crowd quieted. "I'm a husband, a father, a man who saw something wrong and couldn't look away. The real heroes are the women who survived Victor Harrington's brutality. The real hero is Maria Santos, who died trying to expose the truth. The real hero is her sister Elena, who kept that truth alive for 3 years, waiting for someone to listen." He paused. "This verdict isn't the end. There are more men like Victor Harrington out there. More women trapped in basements, in warehouses, in places the world doesn't see. More corruption protecting monsters who believe they're above the law. His voice rose. But today proves something. It proves that the truth matters. It proves that courage matters. It proves that ordinary people, standing together, can bring down giants. The crowd roared. Ryan stepped back. Sarah took his arm. Together, they walked through the crowd, through the cameras, through the noise, toward the SUV where Ghost waited. "Nice speech," Ghost said. "I meant every word." "I know. That's why it worked." They drove home in silence. 1 month later, Victor Harrington was sentenced to life without parole. Officer Mills received 25 years. The corrupt politicians, the compromised judges, the federal agents who would look the other way, all of them faced their own trials, their own verdicts, their own consequences. The house of cards didn't just fall. It burned to the ground. Ryan watched the sentencing on television, James on his lap, Sarah beside him, Max at his feet.
"Is it over?"
Sarah asked. "This chapter is."
"What does that mean?"
Ryan looked at her, at the woman who had stood by him through everything, who had let him go into the fire and welcomed him home from it, who had given him a son and a reason to keep fighting. Agent Bennett called again.
"I know."
"She offered me a job, consulting, helping them identify trafficking networks, find victims, build cases." Sarah was quiet for a moment.
"What did you tell her?"
"I told her I'd think about it."
"And what are you thinking?"
Ryan looked at James, who was reaching for Max's ear with determined fascination. At the puppy, now fully grown, sleeping in a patch of sunlight. At the house they had almost lost, the family they had almost destroyed, the life they had built from the wreckage of a war they didn't choose. "I'm thinking that I spent 12 years fighting enemies in other countries, enemies I couldn't see, couldn't understand, couldn't defeat." He turned to Sarah. "But this, what we did here, it made a difference, a real, visible, lasting difference. Those women are free because we didn't give up. Rosa has a future because we didn't look away."
"So, you want to keep doing it?"
"I want to keep making it matter." He took her hand. "But not if it costs us. Not if it means losing you, or James, or any of this." Sarah studied him. Her eyes, those deep brown eyes that had seen every part of him, were thoughtful, serious.
"Do you remember what you said to me in the hospital, after James was born?"
"I said a lot of things. You said you wanted to build a world where no one ever made him feel small, where the bad guys don't win." She squeezed his hand. "You can't build that world by sitting on the porch, Ryan. You build it by fighting for it. Every day, every case, every person you save." "Even if it's dangerous?" "Everything worth doing is dangerous." She leaned forward and kissed him. "Besides, you've got backup." Max lifted his head at the word, tail thumping against the floor. Ryan laughed. For the first time in months, it was a real laugh. Full, unguarded, alive. "All right," he said. "I'll call Bennett tomorrow."
"Good.
"But tonight,
You're mine."
Sarah stood and pulled him to his feet. "Come on, dinner's almost ready. And your son needs a bath." "Can Max help?" "Max can supervise." They walked inside together, leaving the television playing to an empty room. The news anchor was talking about justice, about accountability, about a Navy SEAL who had taken on a monster and won. But Ryan wasn't listening anymore. He was home, with his family, where he belonged. Tomorrow, he would answer Bennett's call. Tomorrow, he would start the next chapter. Tomorrow, the fight would continue. But tonight, there was dinner, bath time, a baby's laughter, a dog's warmth, a wife's love. Tonight, there was peace. And peace, Ryan had learned, was the most precious thing in the world. Not because it was easy, because it was earned. 3 months later, Ryan stood at the edge of a different river, in a different state, looking at a different warehouse. Max stood beside him, older but ready. Ghost was in his ear, feeding him intel. Agent Bennett waited in a van 3 blocks away with a tactical team. Inside that warehouse, 11 women waited to be rescued. Ryan checked his body camera, checked his weapon, checked his resolve. "You ready?" Ghost asked. Ryan thought about Maria Santos, who had died for the truth.
About Elena, who was graduating nursing school next month. About Rosa, who had started high school with straight A's and a smile that could light up her room. About James, who would grow up in a world slightly less dark because his father refused to surrender. "Yeah," he said. "I'm ready." He moved forward into the darkness. Behind him, the sun was rising, and somewhere, in a house with fresh paint and a fixed porch, Sarah Carter was pouring coffee, watching their son take his first steps, knowing that her husband was out there, doing what he was born to do. Protecting the weak, exposing the truth, fighting for a world where monsters don't win. She smiled and whispered a prayer she had learned to pray on nights when the phone didn't ring and the fear crept close. "Come home safe." Miles away, as if he heard her, Ryan touched the photo of his family tucked inside his vest. Then he stepped into the warehouse, and the fight continued. Because that's what heroes do. Not because they're fearless, because they're faithful. Not because they're strong, because they refuse to let evil win. And not because they always succeed, but because they always, always try. This is not just a story. This is a reminder that courage still exists, that justice still matters, that ordinary people standing together can change the world. So if you're watching this, if you've stayed until the end, remember, you don't need a uniform to be a hero. You don't need a weapon. You don't need permission. You just need the will to see the truth and the courage to act on it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing. And may God bless you, protect you, and give you the strength to be a light in someone else's darkness. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope. And if you believe that love is stronger than hate, that truth is stronger than lies, and that good will always triumph over evil, write faith in the comments below. Because faith is not just what we believe, it's what we do.